You are watching Co-op for Two, broadcasting live from Champaign, Illinois, Sunday, February 5th, 2023 at around 3 p.m. And we are continuing our playthrough of the play-by-mail game from MurdersByMail.com called The Blinded Birder. We're on turn 7. If you are just joining this and you haven't caught up to the previous turns, you should stop watching now. Go watch turns 1 through 6 before you start here. They're only about an hour each, and then it will make some more sense. We got lucky. We got our reply easily within the 1 week period. Hopefully, if the replies come quickly enough, we will be meeting every Sunday at 3 p.m. to play. Let me just check in with the chat, see how everyone's doing. Is anyone up to anything interesting this weekend? I'm actually just back from my friend's house, Rebecca and Chad. They're having a little board game mini convention of their own. So we've been eating snacks and playing board games. And I finally got a chance to try Final Girl, which was interesting. Not exactly my cup of tea, but very thematic and some very cool mechanics that might be worth talking about at some point. And we also started playing a mystery role-playing adventure game called The Shivers, which uses these 3D pop-up, it's like a pop-up book sets that players go in, and it almost plays like a little bit of a classic text adventure game where people say, I want to look at this object, I want to look under this object, let me use this object with this object. But it requires one player to sort of be the game master to run it. It's interesting, and I'll let you guys know how it is after we get a chance to play a little more of it. Debbie says, spent the weekend at a music convention listening to music. I'm assuming you're talking about like what do they call that? They don't normally call those conventions. What do you call a music convention? You call it something else. All right, let us, listening and singing. I see Debbie Levy is one of the performers. What kind of music do you sing, Debbie? Are you in a band, a regular band that plays and has events? Maybe someone has stopped by and heard you. Maybe is there a YouTube channel we can listen to? It's hard to ask questions and get replies on YouTube because of the delay in turnaround. But Debbie will tell us about her band and her project. Modern folk. Well, I like modern folk. One of my favorite bands of all time, which wouldn't really classify as modern folk, but did in its time, is the Pentangle. One of my very, very favorite groups ever. They're sort of a modern folk, modern rock take on classic folk songs. They do a lot of very old Renaissance songs and sort of bring them up. But Bert Jansch and Jackie, can't remember her name, the main singer in the Pentangle, but Pentangle is some very skilled musicians, but some beautiful music. I highly recommend the Pentangle. Maybe start with the album Sweet Child. All right, well, let us get into our case while Debbie tells us more about how we can hear her band play. If you'll remember, on our last turn, we had a bit of a breakthrough. We've been looking for our victim's connections, Rupert Albright. We know he was selling some stuff at an auction, seemed like involved in some illegal business. And we stumbled on, at our last turn, some really important information. We know he was seen out on the grounds with what we thought might be a metal detector of sorts. And when we finally caught up with his old friend said he's been birding with Rupert Albright for years. And then they last saw him 6 weeks ago when Rupert said, I'm done birding completely. No interest in it anymore. Now I'm interested in bats. And Rupert was like an expert in bird song. Like, you could listen to a bird song and he would know what bird that was. And all of a sudden now he's totally infatuated with bats. And then we went to the store, the electronics store, where he first bought a device to listen to bats on the cheap and sort of made it himself. He was totally infatuated with it. And then a couple weeks later, he comes back to the store and he says, I'm going to buy a better one, build a better one. And no expense is too great for this. I want top of the line, everything. He was all of a sudden flush with cash, while we know he's been short of money for a long time. So we think he found something and sold it at the auction and made a lot of money, and now he's going to try to find more of it. And based on what we know, he sold some clay pottery at the auction. We think he has stumbled on some old site of artifacts. We know that this whole town is doing this big archaeological dig from the Bronze Age. And we think that Albright now had been following bats and going into one of these caves. There's a cave here, there's a cave here. There may be some other caves we haven't spotted yet. But we think that he stumbled on something. Although, on the other hand, it's clear he really is infatuated with bats. I mean, he's talking about them to everyone. But it may be the best of all worlds for him. He's found a new love of bats, and the bats have led him to some supply of artifacts. So, if you look at where we sent people last time, we sent Cecily to one of the caves. It's the cave down here that seems most hidden. So that's where we sent Cecily. I'm also interested in this cave here, both near the dig site, but this one seems a little more obvious. This one's a little more hidden, so I think this might be our best bet. I was very tempted to send two people, one to each cave, but the audience convinced me that we had other concerns. So Cecily, the resilient one, we sent to one of the caves. We were going to send Wooster and the dog, but we thought, well, he might get scared off by bats. And also Imogen and Wooster, the dog. Imogen is sort of the rich, entitled woman, and she doesn't take no from these bankers and stuff. So we sent her to Rupert Albright's bank, where we're told we might be able to get information on who bought that pottery from him and for how much. We think he's probably selling it like on the sly, maybe because he shouldn't be collecting artifacts from this town. They don't really belong to him. So I'm not sure what we're going to get from the bank, but we might find out how much he sold it for, and we might find out who bought it. You could imagine that someone might have had a motive to kill him, to steal something of his, so you wouldn't have to buy it. And then the vicar, who we always try to send where he can do the least harm, the vicar we sent to the visitors center of the archaeological dig. For two reasons. First, we're very curious about this archaeological dig and its connection to the stuff that Rupert might be selling, but also perhaps to this side story of a ghost that we've seen scrounging around. But also because it's the last place that we think that we know that Rupert Albright is working with someone from his church to sell this maybe stolen artifact. And we have two theories for where we might find her. One is at the Choral Society, but one is at the Visitors Center. So we're going to send someone, the vicar, to the Visitors Center. If we happen to bump into Catherine there, then we found her. If not, we may have to go to the Choral Society next. So there you have it. That's where we sent our people. And now it's time to read our reply as I check in with the chat. Not a band. I probably find some videos of some of my friends singing. Well, yeah, let's see it. Debbie, please share it. I mean, you guys should feel free to share what projects you're working on in this channel. There's no reason not to. I'm curious to hear what you guys work on, especially any creative or work projects. Emmy says, looking at her drawing, Cecily is also the one with a walking stick. I don't know if she really has a walking stick or if she just thinks of herself as old, but it is a good point that if she really does have a walking stick, she might not have been the best one to send into the cave. That's a good point. Well, we'll find out. We'll find out. That's a good point. Oh boy. Okay, let's see. It's a very short letter back from Cecily. Maybe it is Cecily telling us she couldn't make her way in. Let's see what she says. Dearest Jessie, I made my way to the cave on the southeast edge of Danham Hill, but alas, I found nothing there that seemed pertinent to our investigation. There were definitely bats roosting within. The great quality of guano at its entrance suggested a significant population, but the cave was too small for me to go within. Interesting. The view of the archaeological dig across Danham Hill was impressive, and further to the north, along Hanger Draw, I spied a second cave there, which from my vantage looked larger than the one at my back. If Rupert Albright came here searching for bats, he no doubt would have noticed the other cave. What fun this is! I feel as if I'm hunting for treasure. All right, so you might imagine that Wooster, the dog, could have gone in this hole, but the point is irrelevant, because if Rupert couldn't get in this bat hole, then he obviously didn't get any treasures from it. But it really seems to be pointing us to the other cave. So it looks like I guessed wrong about what cave had good information for us. So that's, this is letter, let's just write this down. So we struck out here, but it does seem to want us to go to the other cave. This is letter 6. All right, well, I think we're going to have to go to the other cave. Clearly this wasn't the right one, although we could change our mind now about who to send if we think Cecily's not the right person. All right, but it is a bat cave. All right, Imogen has more to say. Let's see what Imogen says. Visited the Netherwellow Bank and Trust. She says, Dear Jessie, and so that's all I'm asking for. I told Director Mayfield at the Netherwellow Bank and Trust. A reasonable exception. Albright is dead. We've heard stories that he was living on his dead wife's inheritance, but that recently he may have come into a bit of money. Knowing more about all that could be the key to solving his murder. Mayfield blanched. The daughter's office was opened a crack. His secretary, though busy on her typewriter, was just outside. That may be, Lady Bickford, Smithy, but unless it's the police asking these questions, it isn't reasonable at all. Wooster, who was sitting attentively on my lap, sensed the tension in the room. This banker does not want to give us any information. Sensed the tension in the room. His back bristled. I smoothed my hand down his spine and said, Have the police asked? No, they have not, which suggests that Albright's finances are beside the point. I could see that pulling punches was not likely to yield results. Director, it would be unfortunate if the Bickford Smithies had to start banking elsewhere. She's threatening to pull her money out of the bank. This was the right person to send. The veins in his bald temples showed his pulse. He spoke in a whisper. I can't pull accounts without having to log it. If the police do come, they'll ask for the ledgers. They always do. And they'll ask me why I requested what I did. I would be forced to tell them it was to assist you. Imagine what that would do to our reputation. I understand, I said, but it's not every day that a client is shot in the eye. Surely your staff would have already gossiped the whole affair through. Asking them a few small questions won't require a log entry. He wrestled with the idea for a moment, then shook his head. I'm sorry, but that's no better. You're indeed a valuable client, but this affair involves an equally valuable client. Please understand, I cannot help you. Aha, it sounds like he's saying that the person who bought the item and paid for it is also a client here at the bank. Please understand, I cannot help you. I was at once reproached and intrigued. As I strode out of his office, his secretary stood and said, I do hope we were able to serve you well today, my lady. If you need anything else, please don't hesitate to call. Or, even better, to visit. She smiled at me. In her hand was a business card with a personal note. Okay, let's take a look at this note. Here it is. I want to help. Signed, Olivia. Olivia Quinn, Secretary to the Director, representing Netherwellow Bank and Trust Limited, Savings, Loans, and Estates. And then she's got her address here, N55 Netherwellow, Middleshire, England. Oh, that's the address of the bank. Okay, so Olivia wants to help. So let's see if we can't find Olivia. Sounds like the buyer is someone rich and influential and a local client in Netherwellow. Let's see if we can find Olivia Quinn in our directory and visit her at her home. Here's Olivia Quinn, N41. All right, so let's not forget we have a bunch of allies that we've been forgetting we can visit. All right, let's add to our list of places Olivia Quinn. N41. So she's going to give us information, and it's clearly someone who's an important rich client who bought the thing from Rupert Albright. I want to help, she says. Okay. Any other lords or ladies? I don't think so. I think we're going to have to talk to Olivia. She's the only one who's going to tell us who did it. Could be someone, some big shot in Netherwellow. Could be the church bought it. Let's see what the vicar found. Vicar's report, ill tempers and ill men. He gives titles to his reports. The vicar has got a real sense of style, personality, humor of his own type. So, but he sends reports, he titles them, and this one's titled "Ill Tempers and Ill Men." The Danham Hill Visitor Center is a squat industrial building used mostly for coordinating the work of the 24 volunteers and students who work there. In the lobby is a small museum of sorts, ringed in locked glass cases, displaying the spear tips, crude pottery, and beadwork of Bockerley's Iron Age ancestors. All through the cases are photographs showing a young Professor Current Howncliffe leading dig operations during the war. Current Howncliffe is the professor's name. Surrounded by smiling scientists, mostly young women, dressed in the ubiquitous unisex coveralls of the English archaeologist. He looked quite pleased with himself, and I couldn't fail to notice that his clothes were the least dirty of anyone in the shots. One so high that he's above labor, I muttered to myself. I wandered all about. 3 20-something women were present in several of the photos, a tall blonde, a sprightly brunette, and a dark-haired shovel-wielder with a perpetual scowl. Okay. So 3 20-something women. I wonder if one of these is our Catherine. A label read EX178, British food vase with red pigmentation. The shelf had a ring of dust on it, 5 inches in diameter, as if something round had recently rested there. Oh, that's interesting. Did he not find the vase but steal it? Did she steal it and he sold it? Suddenly I was accosted by a severe woman. Though a decade older than in the photos, I recognized her instantly. The scowling shovel wielder. She introduced herself as Dr. Janet Rosso. When I told her what we were up to with our investigation, she sneered at me. I didn't know Mr. Albright, nor did anyone who works here. I find that hard to believe, I said pleasantly. It's a small village after all. Well, we keep to ourselves, she snapped. There's important work to do here, entrusted as we are with the legacy of Dr. Franks. We've no time to socialize with the locals. Dr. Franks, I asked, not familiar with the name. She rolled her eyes. Sir Augustus Wollaston Franks, Victorian discoverer of Danham Hill. We must finish what he began, what Dr. Hounscliffe continued in his stead, and what myself and my colleagues have carried on ever since the war. Danham Hill is the source of the most valuable artifacts this side of England. It is a massive responsibility. Oh, yes, I'm certain it is, I said. Speaking of artifacts, is something missing from this display case? There's a label, but the shelf contains little more than a dust ring. Her sneer tightened. She hesitated. Merely a misplaced exhibit, a bit of pottery. Probably one of the graduates checked it out and forgot to register it. Oh my. And who might one register something like that with? I asked. Surely with such valuable artifacts around, you have a person overlooking security. Well, of course we have. And she hesitated again. The scowl returned. But you cannot speak to him. He's out ill. Not that it's any of your business. Well, my business is the Lord's. Is there anything beyond his purview? I smiled at her. What's his name? Well, Mr. Wentz, but I'm warning you, holy man, mind your own concerns. Danham Hill isn't one of them. If you've more questions to ask, you'll have to take them up with the director herself at the main dig. But I'll strongly suggest just go back to your church. Wow, this woman's got an attitude. All right, so what have we learned? We've learned about Mr. Went, who's the head of security, who someone would register when they're taking something out. And she says what's missing is a bit of pottery. That sounds like what Rupert Albright sold at the auction. And then she tells us about Sir Augustus Wollaston Franks, who started this dig. Dr. Hounscliffe is the one who continued it. And then there's another woman who's running it now. What does she say? So we've got Went. There's our pottery. There's the person who started all this. There's current Hounscliff. And then 3 women. Tall blonde, sprightly brunette, and dark-haired shovel wielder. And then when we meet the shovel wielder, she's 10 years older, right? Decade older. So the 3 women in the photo would be in their 30s now. In their 30s now. In case we think one of these is the person we're looking for. Tall blonde, sprightly brunette. I think the woman we're looking for is a blonde, right? And it's exhibit 178. And who's the current director we said? She says, we say, who would we talk to? She says, you cannot speak to him, the director. She says, I'm sure she mentioned the director being a woman. Went to security. This woman is Janet Rosso that we've just met. She doesn't know Albright. She tells us about the history. My colleagues have continued it. We ask about the dust ring. Where is the woman we're looking for? How is she described? What age is she? So the woman we're looking for is named Kathleen. We haven't been able to find her yet. What we're told about her: pretty in a bony way, blonde hair, big eyes. Kathy or Kathleen. I'm not sure we were given an age, though. It might be time to try to find her now at the Choral Society. Janet Rosso or Dr. Went, Mr. Went, he might know who could have stolen it. And he might give us the address of these 2 women or whatever graduate students he suspects. So our Kathleen could be a graduate student. It's too bad we don't have an age on her. We don't, right? It would be nice to know if our Kathleen that we're looking for is in fact a student of student age, or if she's... We know she's a soprano. But we don't know the age, huh? One of them, Kathleen, nearly quit. She's in the choir. I guess she's probably a little older. But this sort of would go against our theory that he found this in one of the dig sites with the bats. Maybe maybe the bats have nothing to do with finding any artifacts. Maybe he stole this just to fund his interest in bats. If it was stolen, maybe the bats just became a hobby, yeah. Maybe the bats have nothing to do with finding anything. Yeah. Although, let me just remind you, one other little piece of clue that made us really suspect the bats. I want to remind you that when we went to the electronics store, he builds his first heterodyne to listen to bats on the cheap, right? He comes back, he says, I'm going to buy the best one I can find. Now look what, this is the part I wanted to remind you of. First one he built on the cheap, he said he couldn't afford new components. He went down, scrounged parts. I remember how excited he was when he finally got it working. He said he'd found the perfect cave nearby for his first test. He came in the next morning just beaming. Hear anything good, I asked? He giggled and said, yeah, and I saw something interesting too. So that was another reason why we sort of got the hint that he found something. So but the question we have now is, did he just But then the question has to be, why is this woman using him? Like, we thought it was the other way around. We thought he found something and he's using her to sell it. Now it sounds like maybe it's the opposite. She stole it from her work and gave it to us to sell, and maybe we're going to claim that we found it. Is that the idea? All right, let's get addresses for some of these people. I'm still a little troubled that I thought I remembered we read that there was a new woman director. So the woman we meet who's the shovel wielder is Dr. Janet Rosso. She tells us about the history. The colleagues have continued it ever since. She seems like she knows this thing was stolen, but she's sort of covering it up. She's saying, maybe someone just stole it, but she seems oddly, her response is odd about it. And then she doesn't want to tell us who's security guy. All right, well, let's look up where the security guy lives. Went is, looks like C53. Okay, C53. We could talk to a relative of Wollaston Franks. He's going to be dead, but he might have a relative in the town. Or the Historical Society might know about him. All right, I don't see any relative in town. What about Hounscliff? Current Hounscliff, is he still alive? Did the ladies kick him out? Hounscliff, he is still got an entry, C83. So this professor who was leading this expedition, this work, who might have gotten pushed out by these three women, he's still around. We could talk to him. And British food vase with red pigmentation. So let's not forget that if we could get information on what was auctioned, we could get confirmation about whether that was this one. Or if we could talk to the person who bought it, we could find out. All right, so let's think about where we want to go now. We've got a bunch of new people, including the bank woman who wants to talk to us, the security guy, the old professor who worked at this dig, the Coral Society, where we think maybe this woman, Kathleen, might be found, and then, of course, the other cave. And the lecture, yes, let's remember, there is a lecture about the Iron Age controversy, people. Okay, so here is, so that's a good point. So at the lecture, who's speaking? Current Hounscliff. So actually, this person who ran this original dig, he is one of the people speaking at this talk. And he's talking about the early history of this dig. We went to that auction, right? Let me just make sure. Did we go to the auction house or just... We did surely go to that. Yes, we did go to that auction that's mentioned in the paper. All right, so we have a bunch of places to go. What do you think? Let's see what the audience wants to do. What does the chat want to go? If anything related to the crime scene, I'm not sure if we've yet gone to the people that know about bullets and stuff. I think we have gone to them, but we may have put them off, thinking that they could use a little more time to work on it. We were told we should be keeping better list of places mentioned that we haven't gone to yet. We get told by a couple people who would know about the bullets, but I feel like we're chasing down some interesting leads even before all that. Okay, Mitchell Caldwell is the guy who knows about firearms, B59. I don't think we've talked to him yet. So to answer your question in the chat, we could check on that to see if we could get a better lead on what gun was used, but we know it was a pistol. It does seem, I think I agree with Nicola that Olivia just gave us her card and says she wants to talk to us and tell us something about the bank. It does seem like Imogen should follow that up, right? She's in the neighborhood. She should go talk to Olivia, right? Surely we're going to follow up on this before she changes her mind. So I think we got to send Imogen to Olivia. Whether it's critical to our case or not, not sure. But I think surely, it just thematically it makes sense. She's just got handed the card. So I think we got to send Imogen to N41, which is Olivia Quinn, the bank secretary. Okay, now, two more places. The vicar, who was inserting himself, was not getting along too well with this woman at the archaeological site. But we could have him follow up with the security guard. If this professor woman treats him like she treated the vicar, he might be very happy to share some information with us. But then, of course, we've got the other cave, which I am really keen to go to. I mean, it really sounds like... And Cecily has just seen it, so I really feel like... I'm not so sure it's related to our case now, but I feel like we need to send... We need to check out that cave. So I'd be inclined to send Cecily to continue while she's there at the first dig site at the cave, to send her to the other one. I'm inclined to have her go to the one she can see and look in that cave, and then maybe have the vicar either go to the Coral Society to find Kathleen or follow up with the security guard, which might be similar. Nicholas says, I wonder if the cave is urgent at this point. What do we expect to get from it? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it feels like we're good. We're having doubts about whether he found stuff while looking for the bats, but it could just be a total red herring that he just fell in love with the bats, and so he had to come up with ways to get money for the bats. So you guys want to postpone the bats? We could postpone the cave with the bats. I still feel like finding Kathleen is our best bet, especially thematically. I always try to think like we could have witnesses get killed off. Like if you've killed someone and then other people might connect you with the murder, you have to kill them too. So maybe we need to put finding Kathleen at the very top of our priority. And maybe that means going to the Coral Society and the security guy. Emmy says, or go to the dig site. One of the other women in the photo might be there. Visible Man says, the cave needs to be searched. I mean, I do agree it eventually needs to be searched. Kathleen could be the woman at the dig site. The only thing that makes me doubt that Kathleen's a woman at the dig site is, would she really steal such an obvious thing if she's still working and getting paid and just involved in the digging? Would it? I guess she has to still be involved if she could get access to it. I think it's time to find Kathleen. Teresa says, what are you guys talking about? Okay, well, we're talking about this case that we're playing. So, what if we sent Cecily? What if we sent the vicar to talk to the security guard who he just asked about, and we pull Cecily back from the field and have her try to find... The vicar is the guy who knows about the religious choral society, though, so it makes sense to have him chasing those two leads. All right, so here's my proposal. I propose we send the vicar to the security guard. The security guard may give us a lead on Kathleen. If he doesn't, then I suggest on our next turn we send the vicar to the Choral Society. So Debbie says it makes more sense to have the vicar talk to the director. You mean the security guy? Because the director is not there for us to talk to, right? He's just talked to the one person he's got access to there. We don't know who the current director is. Mind your own concerns. Okay, so no matter what, the vicar should talk to Mr. Went, the security guy. He's the one who would know that stuff's been stolen and who he might suspect and who might have access to it. So I'm going to say that the vicar is going to talk to Mr. Went. All right, so let me just do that, because that, to me, that's just a natural thing. Which could lead us directly to Kathleen. Now, it's Cecily that's the wild card. Debbie says no. The director is at the dig site. I see. The director's at the dig site. Is that what we got told and where I keep missing it? So you'll have to take them, if you've got more questions, you'll have to take them up with the director herself at the dig site. Okay, I knew the director was a woman mentioned at the dig site. Okay, so the director at the dig site, who's a woman, who's probably one of the other women in this picture, she's going to be at E22, which is the dig site. Okay, fine. All right, at least we solved that. All right. So we could go talk to the director, but surely we're going to want to talk to the security guy, right? Surely we're going to want to talk to the security guard. Yes, we're going to want to go to the dig site eventually, but surely we need to go to the security guy first. Let's see. Emmy says, one of the women in the photo is the ghost. So we're told on our last letter that probably the ghost was someone unauthorized hanging out near the stone squires, the standing stones, where we know there's going to be another dig. Okay, we're definitely going to go to the archaeological dig site. But the question is, do we go there now? So if we wanted to, thematically, we could have Cecily stop off at the dig site on her way to the other cave. I'm okay with that. Do you want to do that? Do you want to have Cecily stop off at the dig site and then the next turn she heads up to the other cave? Or shall we have Cecily go straight to the other cave and then circle back? ME says, I agree with Antina. And Antina says, if you want to get close to Kathleen from all sides, dig site and Coral Society. All in on Kathleen, huh? Okay, think about it. You say the director could be Kathleen. That does not make sense. The director is not selling pottery through Rupert Albright. That is too high a position. The director is not going to be the one selling little pieces of pottery from the display case. If she wanted to embezzle stuff, she would be doing something else. So I agree that I don't think she's going to be Kathleen. Now, she might tell us about Kathleen, but I feel like the security guard, we could get lucky and he could be some misogynist who is ready to dish dirt on all the women involved here and tells us who Kathleen is. The director could tell us about Kathleen too, of course. But maybe the director's more likely to talk to Cecily. So what about that? What about my proposal that we send Cecily from this bat cave to the dig site, and then next turn we think maybe we'll plan to send her up to the other bat cave unless we get a better lead on Kathleen. We still need to go to the Coral Society, but I think, we don't want to... If we've got other places we want to go, we might as well go to them before we hit the Coral Society, which is more of our long shot. Dig site could have other clues for sure. All right, let's do that. Let's send Cecily to the dig site. And then she'll get ready to go to the other bat cave on her way. How does everyone feel about that? So Vicar to the security guy, Imogen to the bank secretary, and Cecily is heading to the dig site on her way to the other bat cave next game. Okay, Debbie says fine by me. I'm going to take that as a yes. All right, so Cecily is going to the dig site. E22. I think that's a pretty reasonable solution. Pretty reasonable balance. All right, let me just mark these places here. Okay, so Cecily is going to the dig site. And we have the vicar who's going to C53 to the security guard who's nearby. Okay, security guard is all the way up here near Carper Pond. And then Imogen is talking to Olivia, who's at N41, which is sitting over there. All right. Who would get more out of security, the vicar or Cecily? I think the way I'm thinking about it is that Cecily's like this feminist woman. She's going to talk to the feminist director of the dig. And we've seen already the vicar is already clashing with the other women who run this whole archaeological place. He's going to exit. He doesn't get along well with them. He rubs them the wrong way. They're not religious. They're scientific. They don't have any truck with the religious vicar. He's like, God is my purview. I have purview over all issues. And they're like, you have no business here. So she's sending us away from here. So he's going to go over to the man who doesn't live here, who might feel put upon by all these high-powered women, and maybe the security guard will leak some information to him, some gossip, whereas Cecily is going to step in to the archaeological dig, which is all run by women now, and they'll give her more information. I think that makes more sense. All right, here we go. Let's do it. All right, so Cecily is going to E22. Imogen is going to N41, which is Olivia, the secretary, and the vicar is going to C53. Okay, last chance for any objections before I enter this. Meta question. Jan says, how much designer would like to punish players for sending the wrong person? That's a good question. And Tina has given you the answer, which is for the other games, it didn't really matter. What we suspect is that 99% of what you learn at every location is going to be told to you. It could be told to you in a different voice, but the same information. And then sending the exact right person in some places might give you a little bit extra. So just a little bit extra. But the other way to look at it is it's part of the fun, deciding who to go there. So if you were just, talking about just the facts, it probably doesn't make that much of a difference who you send where, but it is more enjoyable to think about who to send. And you might get a little bit extra by sending the right person, or a little bit less by sending the really wrong person, but just a little bit. All right, here we go. We're going to send this move in. There you have it. Okay. Another set of turns done. This case is still very compelling. And I would say, in addition to, Robert has a slightly different view, but in addition to this case remaining a mystery more than our other two cases, it also feels to me like the decisions of who to send where feel more interesting than our previous two cases. I'm not sure if that's true or if the rest of the audience agrees with me on that. It just feels like those decisions have been more entertaining for us to make here. let's not forget, we should go back to that cave, because that might at least wrap up the angle. Is he just care about bats and money, or did he find something? But hopefully we'll have a little bit of that resolved. And I know we do want to go to the Coral Society and find Kathleen soon. Okay. I'll see you hopefully next week. If we get the reply in time, we'll meet again at 3 p.m. next week to play the next episode of this. In the meantime, we do have to decide what larger games to play. And I did get, you can see behind me there is Curse of the Dark, an escape room game that's got some 3D stuff to build that looks interesting. But the other thing we've been discussing in the Game Queue thread on the Board Game Geek Guild for this channel, which you can find a link to on the About page, is possibly playing one of the longer Hunt-A-Killer-like games by a company called A Killing Affair, Season 1 Independence Day. That's got like 6 episodes that could be long, so that may take us several sessions to finish. But one of the incentives to play that, in addition to hearing that it's pretty good, is that that company is going to be kickstarting a new game of this same flavor, but maybe even a longer one. And so it might benefit us to play that to see if the new Kickstarter is of any interest to us. But we'll stop there. It was fun catching up. I've got to go back to my friend's house to play more board games. I'll see you guys on the next video.